Formula One cars in 2026 are going to be slower than the cars from 2020. Yeah, you heard that right. The pinnacle of motorsport, the fastest racing series on the planet, is about to take a massive step backward. And before you click away thinking this is clickbait, I need you to understand something. This isn't a rumor. This isn't speculation. This is confirmed by the FIA themselves. The 2026 cars will lose between 30 to 40 kilometers per hour on the straights compared to current cars. But here's what nobody is talking about, and what's going to blow your mind by the end of this video. This might actually be the best thing that ever happened to Formula One. Stick with me because the reason why is not what you think. Let me paint you a picture. Remember 2020? That was the year Lewis Hamilton was absolutely untouchable in that Mercedes W11. That car was a masterpiece of engineering, a rocket ship on wheels that could hit 370 kilometers per hour on the straights and still dance through corners like a ballerina. It's considered by many to be one of the fastest F1 cars ever built. The sound of those hybrid power units, screaming down the straight at Monza, the late braking zones, the sheer violence of the acceleration out of slow corners. That was peak Formula One performance. Now fast forward to 2026. The FIA has just released the technical regulations, and engineers up and down the paddock are running simulations that all show the same thing. These new cars are going to be significantly slower. We're talking about lap times potentially 3 to 5 seconds slower per lap at some circuits. 3 to 5 seconds. In Formula One terms, that's an eternity. That's the difference between a front runner and a midfield car. And if you're a die-hard F1 fan like me, your first reaction is probably the same as mine was. Why? Why would you make the car slower? This is Formula One. The whole point is to push the absolute limits of speed and technology. The clue is in the name, right? Formula One. The best. The fastest. The most advanced. So why are we going backward? You're probably feeling frustrated right now. Maybe even angry. You invest your time every race weekend. You wake up at ungodly hours to watch races in different time zones. You passionately debate with your friends about racing lines and tire strategies. And now the sport is telling you that the spectacle you love is going to be slower. It feels like a betrayal. It feels like F1 is losing its identity. And it gets worse. Because it's not just about raw speed. These new regulations are going to fundamentally change how these cars look, how they sound, and how they race. The power units are being completely redesigned. The aerodynamics are being stripped back. The cars are going to be smaller, lighter, but ultimately slower. Everything you've come to expect from modern Formula One is about to change. But here's where we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because what's happening in 2026 isn't actually about making F1 slower. That's just a side effect. What's really happening is possibly the smartest strategic move Formula One has made in decades, and once you understand the real reasons behind these changes, you're going to see this completely differently. Let's break down what's actually changing and, more importantly, why. First, the power units. The 2026 engines are going to have a completely different power split. Currently, the hybrid system contributes about 120 kilowatts of power. In 2026, that's jumping to nearly 350 kilowatts. We're talking about almost triple the electrical power. The combustion engine's contribution is actually being reduced, which means we're moving toward a nearly 50-50 split between electrical and traditional power. These are essentially going to be half electric cars. Second, the aerodynamics are being massively simplified. The current cars have incredibly complex floor designs, barge boards, and aero elements that create tons of downforce, but also create massive turbulent air that makes it almost impossible to follow another car closely. The 2026 cars are stripping a lot of this away. Less downforce, cleaner air, simpler designs. Third, the cars themselves are getting smaller and lighter. We're losing 30 kilograms of weight and reducing the wheelbase. These cars are going to be more nimble, more agile, even if they're not as fast in a straight line. Now, your immediate thought is probably, okay, but this still makes them slower, so what's the point? Here's the point: Formula One was dying. Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly and surely, the sport was becoming unsustainable. And I'm not just talking about environmental sustainability, although that's part of it. I'm talking about competitive sustainability, entertainment sustainability, and financial sustainability. Let me explain what I mean. The current regulations have created cars that are so aerodynamically dependent that racing has become processional. Cars can't follow each other closely without losing massive amounts of downforce. Overtaking happens mostly through DRS zones and tire strategy rather than actual wheel-to-wheel racing. Yes, the cars are fast, incredibly fast, but the racing itself has suffered. We've had multiple team principals, including Christian Horner and Toto Wolff, admit that the current cars, while impressive, don't always produce great racing. The 2026 regulations are designed to solve this by reducing aerodynamic dependency and increasing the power from the hybrid system. Cars will be able to follow each other more closely. The electrical power can be deployed more aggressively in battles, creating more opportunities for overtaking without relying solely on DRS. The lighter, smaller cars will be more nimble through technical sections, rewarding driver skill over pure aerodynamic performance. Here's the first key insight you need to understand: speed and entertainment are not the same thing, and Formula One is finally acknowledging this. Think about the best races you've ever watched: Singapore 2011, Brazil 2012, Azerbaijan 2017. Were these races memorable because the cars were hitting record top speeds? No. They were memorable because of the battles, the strategy, the drama, the unpredictability. Some of the most legendary F1 races happened in eras when the cars were significantly slower than they are today. The FIA has run extensive simulations and studies, and they've found that the sweet spot for exciting racing isn't necessarily the fastest possible cars. It's cars that can race closely together, where aerodynamic performance doesn't dominate to the point where track position is everything. Here's a stat that'll blow your mind. In 2020, the average number of on-track overtakes per race was around 25. Sounds decent, right? But here's the thing: over half of those were DRS-assisted overtakes on straights. Actual hard-fought corner-to-corner battles, far fewer. The 2026 regulations are targeting a significant increase in genuine racing overtakes by allowing cars to run closer together without losing performance. So yes, the 2026 cars will be slower on a single lap, but in a race scenario with multiple cars battling, with closer following distances, with more strategic use of electrical power deployment, the racing could be significantly more exciting than anything we've seen in the hybrid era. The second insight is about survival, and this is crucial. Formula One's future depends on attracting new manufacturers, and the 2026 regulations are specifically designed to make this possible. Right now, developing a Formula One power unit is insanely expensive and incredibly complex. The current hybrid V6 turbo engines are engineering marvels, but they're so specialized and so divorced from road car technology that they offer limited value to manufacturers beyond prestige. This is why we've only had 4 power unit suppliers, and why Honda left and came back, and why no new manufacturers have joined despite F1's growing global popularity. The 2026 power units change this calculation entirely. With the massive increase in electrical power and the move towards sustainable fuels, these engines suddenly become relevant to the automotive industry's future. Every major car manufacturer is investing billions into electrification. The 2026 F1 power unit is essentially a high-performance hybrid system that has direct technical transfer to road cars, and it's working. We've already seen the results. Audi announced they're entering Formula One in 2026, taking over Sauber. Ford is coming back, partnering with Red Bull. There are rumors of other manufacturers in discussions. This hasn't happened in decades. The last time we had new major manufacturers committing to F1 was in the early 2000s. And we know how vital manufacturer involvement is for the sport's health, both financially and technologically. Here's what this means for you as a fan: more teams, more competition, more investment, more innovation, and ultimately a healthier, more sustainable sport. Yes, the cars might be slower, but the field could be more competitive. Would you rather watch one team dominate with the fastest car, or 6 teams legitimately fighting for wins with slightly slower cars? I know which one I'd choose. The third insight, and this is the one that really made me change my perspective: Formula One isn't abandoning speed, it's redefining what speed means for the future. See, there's a fundamental challenge facing all of motorsport right now. The world is changing rapidly. Environmental concerns are real. Regulations around emissions and fuel consumption are getting stricter globally. And Formula One, as the pinnacle of motorsport, can either resist this change and become increasingly irrelevant, or it can lead the charge and show how high performance and sustainability can coexist. The 2026 regulations are choosing the latter. These cars will run on 100% sustainable fuel. Not biofuel, not a blend, but fully sustainable fuel that produces near zero net carbon emissions. The hybrid systems are going to be so advanced that the technology will directly influence the next generation of road cars. Formula One is positioning itself not as a dinosaur clinging to the past, but as a technology leader showing the path forward. And here's the really clever part. By making these changes now, gradually F1 is ensuring its long-term survival. Because the alternative isn't maintaining current speeds forever. The alternative is a future where Formula One becomes so out of step with global trends that it loses relevance, loses manufacturers, loses sponsors, loses fans, and potentially loses its ability to race in certain countries due to environmental regulations. Think about it this way: would you rather have Formula One cars that are 30 km slower in 2026, but ensure the sport thrives for another 50 years, or would you rather maintain current speeds for another decade and risk the sport's very existence? The FIA is playing the long game here. They're accepting a short-term reduction in raw speed to guarantee long-term survival and growth. And when you frame it that way, it's not a step backward at all. It's a strategic evolution. Plus, and this is important, drivers will still be pushing to the absolute limit of what these new regulations allow. The cars might be slower than 2020, but they'll still be the fastest circuit racing cars in the world. They'll still be incredibly challenging to drive. The drivers will still be pulling multiple GS through corners. The competition will still be fierce. We're not going back to Formula Ford here. We're just recalibrating what the pinnacle looks like. So let's come back to where we started. Yes, F1 is getting slower. The 2026 cars will not match the raw pace of the 2020 monsters. That's just a fact. But now you understand that this isn't the disaster it first appears to be. This is Formula One making a calculated decision to prioritize racing quality over raw speed. It's F1 ensuring its long-term future by attracting new manufacturers. It's the sport positioning itself as a technology leader for sustainable high performance. And it's the FIA finally acknowledging that the fastest possible cars don't always produce the best racing. Will there be growing pains? Absolutely. Will some fans be disappointed initially? Probably. But if the 2026 regulations deliver on their promise of closer racing, more competitive fields, and a more sustainable future for the sport, then a few seconds of lap time is a small price to pay. And here's something else to consider. Every major regulation change in F1 history has been met with skepticism. When they introduced the hybrid V6 engines in 2014, fans complained about the noise, the complexity, the cost. But those engines ended up being the most efficient and powerful F1 has ever seen. When they changed the aero regulations in 2022 to improve racing, people worried it would slow the cars down. And it did, slightly, but it also gave us some of the best wheel-to-wheel racing we've seen in years. Change is always uncomfortable, but it's also how the sport evolves and survives. If this changed your perspective on the 2026 regulations, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm breaking down every major change coming to Formula One over the next few years, from technical regulations to calendar expansions, and you don't want to miss it. Subscribe so you're ready when 2026 arrives, and you understand exactly what you're watching and why it matters. Now, we've talked about how the cars are changing, but there's another massive change coming in 2026 that nobody's talking about, and it's going to completely shake up the competitive order. I'm talking about the budget cap adjustments and how they're going to affect team development in ways that could see current backmarkers become championship contenders overnight. That video is coming next, and trust me, you need to see which teams are positioning themselves to dominate the new era. I'll see you there.